Hilary Swank was born on July 30th, 1974, in Lincoln, Nebraska, and by the time she was 6 years old, home meant a small trailer near Lake Samish in Bellingham, Washington. Other kids' parents made quiet decisions about who their children could spend time with, and those decisions weren't kind. Invitations stopped arriving. Birthday parties happened without her. At barely 7 years old, she was already learning that the world sorted people by the address they slept at. That lesson stuck. She retreated into books and films because, unlike people, stories didn't judge her. Characters who fought through darkness and climbed out the other side gave her something to hold on to. That escape wasn't just comfort. It became fuel. At home, things weren't stable either. Her parents fought a constant battle against bills and tension, and by the time Hilary was 15, the marriage had ended. What followed was a decision that felt reckless from the outside but necessary from the inside. In 1990, Hilary and her mother Judy packed everything into an Oldsmobile and drove from Washington to California with $75, a single gas station credit card, and no guarantee of anything on the other end. They slept in that car at rest stops and quiet Los Angeles streets for weeks. They washed up in public restrooms and showed up to auditions in borrowed clothes, trying to look presentable when everything underneath said otherwise. Eventually, Judy found secretarial work, and they rented a single room in Burbank. That one room felt like a small miracle. Hilary started picking up minor television roles, nothing transformative, but enough to remind her that moving forward was still possible. She often said those years taught her to appreciate things most people take for granted, because she remembered exactly what the absence of those things felt like. She and her mother worked payphones to line up agent meetings, and their persistence landed them in front of Bonnie Lika, the same agent who had discovered Leonardo DiCaprio. Hilary signed, felt the ground shift slightly beneath her feet, and then walked straight into more rejection. Her first notable film role came in 1992 in the original Buffy the Vampire Slayer, playing a minor character that critics found forgettable. In 1994, she landed the lead in The Next Karate Kid, but audiences weren't interested, and it became the weakest performing film in the franchise. By 1998, she stepped into Beverly Hills 90210 as Carly Reynolds, a waitress and single mother, after being told the part would run 2 seasons. It lasted 16 episodes before her character was quietly written off to Montana. She admitted openly that the firing devastated her and left her questioning whether she belonged in Hollywood at all. People close to the production said later that the writing had failed the character before she ever had a chance to save her. None of that analysis helped in the moment. She went home wondering if she should walk away entirely. Instead, 2 months later, an audition arrived that would rewrite everything. Preparing for Boys Don't Cry required a level of commitment that went far beyond memorizing lines. For nearly a month, Hilary lived as a man in public. She rapped her chest each morning, changed her posture, altered her voice, and studied court documents and literature on gender identity to understand not just how Brandon Tina moved through the world, but why. She later said she lost pieces of herself in the process and wasn't entirely sure how to find them again. When the film premiered in October 1999, critics were stunned. The performance was called one of the most extraordinary seen in years, directed at a woman whose previous credits included a failed karate sequel and a teen soap opera. At the 72nd Academy Awards in 2000, she won Best Actress over Annette Bening, who had been widely expected to take the award. The upset rippled through the auditorium. She forgot to thank her husband Chad Lowe. The moment she stepped off stage, she realized it. His reaction was gracious, telling her she thanked him every day in private. But the media decided otherwise, and the coverage followed them home and kept following them for years. By the time $1 Million Baby came around, she was training 5 hours a day, boxing for 2.5 hours, then lifting weights for another hour and a half, pushing her own vehicle across parking lots, and consuming nearly 4,000 calories daily. She brought her weight from 108 pounds up to 131. She developed a serious staph infection from training blisters and hit it rather than slow down. On February 27, 2005, she won her second Best Actress Oscar at age 30, becoming the first woman in the 21st century to win twice. Standing at the podium, she turned to her husband and told him he was her everything. They separated 8 months later, and by May 2006 the divorce was public. She eventually acknowledged his struggles with substance abuse and the quiet erosion of a marriage the outside world had assumed was solid. The strangest part was how consistent the pattern had become. Both of her biggest professional victories had arrived alongside some of her most painful personal ruptures. The films that followed tested the goodwill the industry had extended her. The Black Dahlia in 2006 carried a $50 million budget and opened to $10 million before stalling globally near its production cost, earning 23% on Rotten Tomatoes. Amelia in 2009 seemed purpose-built for awards attention, but opened to under $4 million and finished with roughly $19 million worldwide against a $40 million budget, scoring 19% from critics who called it emotionally distant. Hollywood began forming a consensus about what she was and wasn't, and the category they placed her in grew narrower with each passing year. She spoke about this directly. 2 Oscars had elevated her into prestige territory, but also fenced her in. When she tried other genres, audiences didn't follow. The industry had sorted her, and sorting in Hollywood tends to stick. For more than 11 years, she quietly lived with ovarian cysts and endometriosis, a slow, painful accumulation that included fatigue, digestive disruption, and persistent discomfort she kept mostly to herself. In 2008, a cyst became dangerous enough to require emergency surgery, and she lost 1 ovary. She didn't speak about any of it publicly until the healthcare system forced her hand. In September 2020, she filed suit against the SAG-AFTRA health plan after it repeatedly denied coverage for her treatments. Despite having contributed to the plan for years, her claims were reclassified as infertility-related and therefore not covered, even when the procedures were designed to prevent cancer and address serious hormonal conditions. She went public not only for herself, but because she understood the same thing was happening to women everywhere who didn't have the platform or resources to fight back. In 2018, a blind date arranged by mutual friends lasted from 10 in the morning until 11 at night. She described meeting Philip Schneider as the kind of connection that makes you understand why all the previous ones didn't last. They married within months. She had frozen her eggs at 37, uncertain about timing, but certain about the desire. At 47, she became pregnant, and on April 10, 2023, Easter Sunday, she gave birth to twins at age 48. The pregnancy was high risk, and she spoke about it with the same measured honesty she had brought to every other chapter of her life. Both babies arrived healthy, and she described the journey to motherhood as a marathon that required her to practice the patience she had spent her whole life building. In October 2025, her rescue dog Kai died without warning. She had adopted him years earlier, and he had been with her through the collapse of her marriage, the health battles, the career confusion, and the long wait for the family she eventually built. 2 months later at Los Angeles International Airport, she approached a woman she believed was filming her children and told her to stop. The woman, Jada Buffis, was traveling with her 2 terminally ill sons on a Make-A-Wish trip to Disneyland and hadn't been filming anyone. When Swank learned the full story, she apologized publicly. Buffis accepted it, saying she understood the kind of pressure that produces that kind of reaction. The exchange ended with 2 women extending grace to each other, which was more than most such stories manage. Hilary Swank's story doesn't follow the shape Hollywood usually offers. It's a record of someone who learned early that the ground shifts without warning and built, over decades, the interior resources to keep standing when it does. She slept in a car before she ever stood on a stage. She won her first Oscar months after being fired from a struggling television show. She held a second Oscar while her marriage was quietly dissolving. She fought a healthcare system over her own body while the industry debated where to place her. And she became a mother at 48, having navigated everything that stood between that trailer near Lake Samish and the life she eventually built. The 2 statues exist. So does everything else. Neither part of that picture is more true than the other. Together, they make a story worth knowing in full.